Rixpress is an R package that allows you to build reproducible analytical pipelines in R and in Python using Nix as the underlying build tool. So Nix is usually introduced as a package manager, and as a package manager with reproducibility in mind. But it's much more than just a package manager. It's actually a end-to-end build automation tool that you can use to build really any type of output that you want. It can be some piece of software. That's usually why it's described as a package manager, but it can also be a machine learning model. It can be a PDF document, your paper. It can be whatever, literally whatever you want, right? And so because it's so useful for reproducibility tasks, I thought that it would be great for data science and statistics. And so this is why I've been working on Rix and now Rixpress. These two packages together allow you now to build these reproducible analytical pipelines. And one of the design goals of Rixpress is actually to mimic the user experience of the targets package. So if you already know the targets package, I think that you will find Rixpress already very familiar. And if you don't know targets, or if you don't know this type of tools, and maybe if you are more of a Python user, maybe you are more used to notebooks. So Rixpress will allow you to move beyond notebooks and instead to lay out your projects as a series of logical, reproducible steps, and which I think is much more robust, and it's much easier to understand, much easier to put into production. So let's take a look. So Rixpress is still in early development, but Rix is already a more mature package, so you need both. So if you don't know about Rix at all, or Nix, I recommend that you start with Rix. So for this video, I will assume that you have already some familiarity with Nix, and especially with Rix. If you don't, check out my other 5-minute introduction to Rix that I will link in the description. So let's take a look. So suppose that I have, I will do a demo. I think this is way better than, just showing you a website. So suppose, where am I? So I am over here. So I need, oh wait, the folder is this one, yeah. So suppose I have this empty cars.csv file and I want to analyze it quickly. So let's just look at it very quickly. So you see the separator is not a comma, but it's this pipe. So it really should be a PSV file. So how do I analyze that using Rix and Rixpress? So I don't have R on this computer. I probably have some Python, probably Python 3, whatever, but it would be my system Python. It wouldn't be like the Python that I use, for data analysis. Not that I use Python much for that, but yeah, I wouldn't use this one. So how do I analyze this data? Well, I start first of all by running this command that you can find in the README of both Rix and Rixpress, and this command will drop me into a temporary Nix shell, as you can see here, and this temporary Nix shell has R with it. So I can start R, and not only can I start R, I also have access to Rixpress. And so now I can do rxp init. And I say yes, and I have these two files that were written. I'm also asked if I want to start a Git repository. I will say yes as well. So yeah, in this case, I cannot do it because I don't have UseThis available. So I really only have Rix and Rixpress. So if you had UseThis, it would initialize the repository for you. But in this case, I will have to do it manually later. That's fine. Now I have this file. So what do I do with that? I can quit my R session. Okay, and if you are a Python user, that's all you really need to do with R. And I can also quit my temporary Nix shell. So now I need to define the environment that I will use to work on this data, that I will use to work interactively, and that I will also use to work with Rixpress. So what I will do is I will edit this one first. Okay, and so you have a comment here that explains that this is the script that defines the default environment for the pipeline, right? And so I can now just say, okay, I want to have like the date which is, I think the latest date I have in the repo is the 5th of May. Wait, we start with the year. So like this, ISO format, of course. Now for this particular pipeline, I will use some R packages, I will use dplyr, and I will probably also add iGraph, which will be useful to visualize the pipeline later on. So for this demo, I won't add a Python package now. I have another video, upcoming video, where I will discuss, polyglot pipelines, multi-language pipelines in greater detail. Let's keep it simple for now. So for this, I don't need Python packages. Now here I have Git packages, so I will just add Rixpress as well. So I will add Rixpress to this environment, and I will add the development version. So also the commit is simply the head. I could put a specific commit to have exactly always the same version whenever I would build that environment. But in this case, I will just use the latest development version, which is not reproducible, of course, but it's just for this demo. And I will add positron. So I most of the time I use Emacs or Vim, but for the purposes of this demo, let me add positron. So now that I have this, actually I quit my temporary shell too quickly, because I now need to run this script, right? So let me just go back to an R session and let me just source this. So this will create now a new file. Oh, sorry, I have a typo in my in my script. So which is the 4th, which was so I don't see it, of course. Ah, yes, I see it now. I see it now. It should be this thing. I think it's fine. Ah, no, and this one will also cause an issue. Yes, great. So now let's go back to R and let's source. So now this will create a new file called default.nix. And this is really the important file. So let's take a look. So now I have this. Okay, so running this, which leverages Rix, generated this. Now this default.nix file, this defines a complete reproducible development environment that includes R, positron, and dplyr. And R and positron are at the versions that were available at the 5th of May. Now, how do I use that? Well, first of all, I need to Nix build. I need to build it. So this might take a little bit of time because it needs to download packages, even though I guess I already have most of them, so it should be relatively quick. So now you see it's downloading these packages. It's building the environment. So this is going to be my environment. This environment, completely reproducible. If I build it in 6 months, it's going to work the same. If I transfer this default.nix file in another computer, it will work the same way. If I copy that in continuous integration in GitHub Actions and so on, it will be exactly the same environment. Always exactly the same versions. And it's not just about R and R packages and positron, it's also about all the underlying dependencies. Every dependency down to the most lower level libraries are managed by Nix and are completely reproducible. So now that I have this, I can start I can start my shell. So now this will drop me into this shell, and now I can start positron. So because I'm recording only on part of my screen, I need to adjust the video. Let me just, I need to adjust, yes, here it is. So you should be seeing now, so I don't think I'm in the right folder. So I don't use positron, so I might be a bit clumsy, but let me just try to navigate. So I should be somewhere over here in my demos. Yes, video script, there we are. Okay, so now I'm in, yeah, I will trust the authors because the authors is me. So now I am in this folder, right? And I am in my Nix session, and I want to analyze the empty cars CSV file. So how do I do that? Well, I can do that as usual, right? With a completely normal script, right? So let me start dplyr, because I have dplyr, and then I could say something like, okay, empty cars, read.csv, empty cars, CSV, and the separator was the pipe, right? So now if I do that, I have my empty cars over here, and I can probably do something like empty cars. Okay, great. Now here it is. Perfect. So I can just work as usual. This is Rix. Now comes Rixpress. Now suppose I don't want to use this script-based way of analyzing my data, because they tend to get very messy. And it's the same, if you use notebooks, these cells, they get executed out of order. It gets very messy very quickly. And reproducibility, is not just about having the right environment. It's not just about having the right packages and so on. It's also about having a execution of steps that is reproducible. So the way you execute these steps needs to be reproducible. So how do I do that? Well, I have this other script that was created by RxP init, which is called gen pipeline. So how does that look like? Let me just make a little bit. Yeah, here it is. So actually, so this gets generated automatically. So now I can say, okay, this is the name of the object. So I'm going to call that empty cars, of course. And the path is, in my case, empty cars.csv. So look at this. This is the file, rxp file. So this is the function that will load files into the pipeline. And actually, I already put here the read CSV function automatically pre-filled. The only thing I need to adapt in this case is this. Of course, here you also, you can change and put whatever read function that you want. The only restriction that you have here is that it needs to be an anonymous function or a lambda function with only one argument, this one being the path. So that's the only restriction you have. So you just pass whatever, anonymous function or lambda function, if it's a Python function, and it's going to work. If you want to read this with Python, and again, in the next video, I will talk about multilingual pipelines, you will just use rxppy, that's all. And same here, these are the functions that execute our code. So in this case, I can say, well, let me just say that I want, for example, to call this filtered empty cars, right? And let me just write here my expression. And this is, usual R code. And here I write, I use this syntax, but you don't need to. The right packages get also loaded automatically for you. Great, I'm done. Actually, let me just change this. We don't need actually to have this. I just put it here to make you aware that this exists, but maybe let me change with build equals false. So what this is going to do, when I'm going to run this code, it's not going to build the pipeline immediately. It's just going to generate all the underlying files that are required to run the pipeline. So let's run this. So again, I've never, my keyboard hotkey game is not good because I've never used positron. Source file, Control-Shift-S. Okay, now I know. So let's run this. And as you see, nothing happened script-wise, but we have a new file called pipeline.nix. So this is the generated Nix code to build this pipeline, to build these two objects, empty cars and filtered empty cars, in a completely reproducible manner. And this is, you don't need to look at it. I'm just showing this to you here. This is the R code you see that I wrote, basically. It's here added as the build phase of this derivation, but you don't need to even look at this file. This is just the file that is going to get built. And here you have a folder called Rixpress. And this folder contains, several files that are needed for making Rixpress function. So great. Let's now build the pipeline. So because I put here build equals false, what I can do now is I can just write a new function called rxp_make. And you've guessed it, this is actually where the build process is going to start. And this is going to build my pipeline, and it's going to build these two objects for me. Now let's take a look at what happens once you do that. You have here run rxp inspect for a summary. So let's do that. rxp inspect. And I have over here filtered empty cars, build success true. So if it failed, it would be false, obviously. I have the object empty cars, and I have the paths to the actual objects. Now, I don't need to mess with the Nix store. If I want to take a look at filtered empty cars, I can just run rxp read filtered empty cars. And running this just shows me the objects, right? And here, if this was computed with Python, for example, if this object here was Python, I could also explore it in my terminal, in my R session. It would work the same because objects get converted on the fly using reticulate. But again, for multi-language pipelines, check out my next video. Something else that I will also show you in the next video is how to visualize the directed acyclic graph of the pipeline. There are 2 functions to do that. This is also for the next video. I hope you enjoyed this very quick introduction to Rixpress. I am very happy to have made this. I think it's going to be very useful to a lot of people. So if you do test it and if you have some issues, do let me know. I would be more than happy to help you. See you next time.